Hi, Brett.
Hi, I'm John. Welcome everybody. If you've ever looked in the mirror at yourself and wondered, I wish I would have done that, you're definitely going to want to hear from my guest tonight, Mr. Amjad Beg. And we're doing this live on the very first edition of Minutes with Brett. Amjad's in Singapore. I'm in Nebraska. And what we're going to do is have a short, roughly 20-minute conversation about Amjad. And I'm very confident that he's got a great story. And when you hear from him and the conversation that we're about to have, it's going to inspire you to, if you're not launching a new business, to maybe do that one thing in your life that you've been aspiring to do for quite a period of time. So with that, Amjad, welcome
Hi, Brett.
to
How are
this
you?
edition of I'm doing great. It's great to see you, and good morning to you in Singapore. And I know that there's a
Thank you.
lot of folks in Singapore actually that are sipping their tea and coffee that got up to watch this before work. So I think this is great, and it's really wonderful to see you. And Amjad, why don't you just, you and I've known each other, I was thinking, for about a little over 16 years, I think. And
Yeah.
um, we worked together in Singapore and have become very close in the ensuing years after that. And we
Yeah.
worked again together in Singapore for different banks. But why don't you just, if you could, give the audience maybe I don't know, a 60-second version of your life and career, and then I've got a few questions for you about your
Oh,
business.
sure. So,
Mm,
so uh,
yeah.
I started my journey in banking in about 20 years ago in Citigroup, and that's where all the engines start cranking in the brain, and you try and figure out what's best for you. How do you think? How do you work? And I had the honor of working with some awesome mentors along the way. And so I was in wealth management, private banking, doing a lot of transformation work. So it's more so about taking a step back and trying to understand what makes a clock tick and how best can we improve things, right? So, and I did that across financial institutions. I've worked for the World Bank. I've been very happy with my bout.
Mm,
But I always used to think that, if I can work for an institution with in uncertainties or challenges and all sorts of dynamics of people and environment, why can't I do something for myself with certainty? And it's about
mm,
uh,
mm-hmm.
but that the driver for that has to be a dream. You have to really have the passion for making what you want work. And if you can do that and plan it accordingly, but have the gusto to go reach for the stars, then anything's possible.
Yeah. So basically your background, you're a banker by background, and different aspects of banking actually. So not just
Yeah.
one job, but several different aspects on both the business and the finance side, and that's
Yeah.
great. And now tell us a little bit about your business, and then I've got a few questions I'd like to kind of ask you about how about the inception of that business. But Biryani Central is the name of it.
That,
So maybe you could kind of describe what the business is and what you're doing currently.
sure. So making biryani has been in our family for a long time, for generations, and it was always about tying or doing something with food which people love, and there's a connection that you can establish and build with. And I always knew that at the one point or another, running a business associated with biryani would make sense. But how was I going to do that was a big question mark, and that was about dreaming and planning things out along the process. So, and because these recipes that we have within our family are ancestral, they've been passed on over time. It was more so about also keeping that intact. So moving from banking to learning how to cook biryani was a big shift.
Mm.
You could sort of say I was banking on biryani, sort of, in a way. and a pun.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
but the idea was about it. So it took me about 3+ years to actually learn how to actually make good biryani. So basically, follow
Mm,
the ancestral tutelage, and then apply that and say, okay, how is this business going to work? Now, is it going to be a standard brick and
hmm
mortar process, or am I going to leverage off technology and leverage off the multiple solutions that we have? Because if I had tried to do this maybe 10 years ago, maybe I couldn't do it. So there is a right time and place for everything, but you have to have the gusto to do it. So there were
hmm
platforms and solutions that were popping up over the years, which would help me with my sales and marketing, which would help me with my order management system. But again, I would have to dream about how these things would come to play. How would they all sort of mesh together, right? And
So
that's where,
you would dream about it. You would actually
yeah,
dream about it.
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Wow.
you have to
Yeah.
so you have to envision how your business is going to work in your mind before you can get things done.
hmm Where did you learn to do that?
I guess it was a bit of both. There was a lot of uh, mental stimulation at work, right? So when I was in city, it was always about following a very simple abbreviation that I was taught. It's called PRISM, which is Products, Research, Infrastructure, Sales, and Marketing, and I never forgot that. And that
hmm
was always the engine for my thought process. And I was like,
hmm
okay, if I can apply that in banking, why can't I apply that to any line of work or something that I want to set up? And if
hmm
it's your own business, you're the captain of your own ship. You make the calls, you take the risks, and you're accountable for it. So, but you need to own it
hmm
100%. That's what it is. And if you are really
hmm
owning it, you won't let it go.
Yeah. Yeah. So Amjad, what at what point in your dreaming about this did you actually decide I'm going to take the plunge? Because you've got the COVID pandemic, and just a side note for the audience, Singapore has done one of the best, very best
Yep.
jobs around the world in managing COVID-19. The government and the people, the great people of Singapore, have really come together and done an outstanding job throughout the pandemic. But nevertheless, there was a lot of slowdown
Yep.
in order to actually manage that. And here you decided, Amjad Beg decided, I'm going to launch a business in the middle of all of this. So at what point and what pushed you over the edge to actually do that? Why not wait for things to get better after a vaccine and et cetera?
So I've always had a personal motto in my life, and it's always about, I guess you could say it's a glass half full or glass empty point of view.
Mm-hmm.
uh, I saw this was like a typhoon, like a hurricane coming in. And so you're either going to be on a raft, thinking that you'll get capsized, or you're either going to ride the wind and just go for it, right? So the idea with COVID was that I wanted to set up quality biryani, which people would buy in, and not have the exposure to set up a restaurant and put in the heavy costs to establish a risk, right? So it was more so to
Mm-hmm.
say, okay, how am I going to mitigate all the challenges that I would have and keep this process really smooth? And with COVID, nobody was keen on going out. So as you know, people were basically ordering in. And you have a
Mm-hmm.
lot of order management systems out there, which you can do your research on to understand which is the best fit, which works best with you. And then you tie your recipes to the order management system. You integrate it with a website. You go digital. I mean, every industry has had a disruption. Every industry, and so likewise, the restaurant industry has had significant disruptions. COVID was one of them. So it's about finding solutions
Mhm.
which you can work with. The other thing is that even without COVID, there has been a significant shift where customers don't want to go to restaurants because they can simply order their food delivered to their place. And that's become
Hmm.
an entire industry in itself. And so
Mhm.
it's about riding multiple waves which are giving you opportunities. So COVID, yes, was a
Mhm.
push factor. I was in banking for 20 years, but again, as I had mentioned before, why depend on uncertainties where I'm working for somebody else versus owning what you have and being certain that you can get it going. And that was the driving factor for why I did this.
Mhm. Have you had any regrets since doing this, Amjad?
Not really. I think if I was to quantify one regret, so I'm a sociable person. I love to mingle. I love meeting people every day, and I'm doing that in my job. I get to meet
Mhm.
awesome customers or would be customers who want to try our heritage and try our biryani, and that's fun. But I do sort of miss the old bonds of friendship and colleagueship in banks, right? That you're
Hmm.
they're regular faces that you would meet. They sort of become your second family. But the
Mhm.
silver lining to that was they also become your customers. so so that so that,
Yeah.
that, that so that sort of worked in our favor, because the contacts that you build over your tenure work to your advantage, and then it's about building off that through word of mouth and engagement.
So, Amjad, are you profitable at this point?
Yes. So that was a blessing in a sense, because what I did was that I reverse engineered what I wanted from the very beginning, and that goes back to the planning that we talked about. So
Mhm.
knowing full well that I was not going to set up a brick and mortar operation, knowing full well that I was going to minimize my costs and depend on technology, that gave me a huge uphand. So I was going to say, okay, look,
Mm.
what do I need to do to manage my orders, which come in on demand? So I'm not wasting inventory, I'm not wasting supplies, I'm not losing money that
Mm.
way. And when you depend on technology, your dependence on additional manpower goes down significantly. So I've been I'm the cook, I'm managing my marketing, I'm managing my sales, and it's all doable. Yes, you're hands on, it's busy, but I knew that, okay, if I was going to get this business going, how many people would I have to engage with on an aggregate, on a margin, to say that I'm to figure out what sustainability is? And I had that
Mhm.
in my mind. I planned that out. And that also ties up with the work that I used to do, because I was an analytical guy in banking. So it all fell into place to work off my strengths and say, okay,
Mhm.
this is working. This is working. So when we got the business going, and it started chugging along, of course, we started with a few customers, but word of mouth and marketing and sales stepped in. And knowing full well what the margin was and how I could best control my costs, we were always
Mhm.
positive, because I knew that I was not going to
Mm.
sandbank or go heavy on expenditure. So so
Mhm.
this is the main change. So I sort of did the exact opposite of what restaurants do today. What restaurants do today are
Yeah, that's
basically,
what I'm gathering. Yeah.
yeah. So what restaurants do today is they go in heavy on injections, and then they hope and expect the marketing and sales campaigns to make it work for them. But what what I did was I wanted to work off the convenience of what the customer wants and use that to my
Mhm.
advantage.
Mhm. So basically, you turn the restaurant, the typical restaurant model, upside down, is
Yeah.
what I'm hearing from you. So,
Yep.
so basically,
Absolutely.
while a lot of restaurants actually around the world have struggled with COVID because of their dependency to do a lot of, correct me if I'm wrong, by the way, but a lot of quantity and
Yep.
churning of customers in and out in order um, to be profitable and sustain that profitability. You don't have to worry about that. You don't have to cover that overhead.
Yep. Absolutely. and it
Mm-hmm.
all boils down to the simple fact that you have to aspire, you have to dream, and it's a continuous process of uh, improving. I mean, even as of right now, as the business keeps chugging along and it operates uh, of
Mm.
the goodwill of people and the nature of wanting to try good food, it boils. You can never just step back and say, "Okay, I'm good." It's always going to be about how do we take the next step to to move forward. So before I was working off a kitchen, which would basically let me produce close to biryanis for 100 people a day. But now
Mm.
I'm thinking, okay, how am I going to take it up to 200? Because at the end of the day, these are ancestral
Mm-hmm.
recipes which go back hundreds of years, and
Mm-hmm.
I do
Mm-hmm.
not want to take the risk of uh, sort of like it's a Colonel Sanders chicken recipe, right? So how do we figure
Mm-hmm.
this out? So it's about working off processes, knowing full well what we produce, and leveraging off that.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that's great. And I'm John. So it's all advance order, is that right? That's how
That's
you
correct.
control this, right?
So
And then
yeah.
can somebody from overseas like myself, could I order a meal through your company and have it delivered to somebody in Singapore? Is that possible?
Absolutely. And this is where I've said I've had privilege of working with great mentors such as yourself, because that's exactly what I've done. So I've incorporated that into my business model from the scratch. So I was thinking that, okay,
Wow.
how am I going to, so within banking, we would have banking referral processes. So I was going again, how can I apply that
Mm.
to Biryani Central? So I had already planned to make sure that, okay, instead of sending flowers or chocolates to your loved ones, why don't you send biryani?
Mm-hmm.
So we actually have
Mm.
a good steady base of customers in Hong Kong and Dubai, which basically go online to our system and order biryani for their loved ones and friends or colleagues in Singapore. And
Mm.
that
That is great. Yeah.
I when I got that going, I was like, okay, this is not going to work. This is a serious step of uncertainty, but it turned out to be something fantastic.
Yeah.
So basically, in terms of channels, we have our local base of customers.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a very heavy lunch order process. We have a weekend and brunch order processes. We have orders coming in from
Mm-hmm.
overseas. So these are the three main drivers of customers which are coming in to support the business. But then it boils down to one thing: that level of quality and standard that we deliver has to be consistent. And that can never be achieved
Mm-hmm.
if you hire too many chefs, because you know that famous saying of how too many chefs break an omelet, or
Right.
mess up an omelet. So
Definitely. Yeah. So how many people are working for your company now, Amjad?
um, right now, I'm the guy
Mm.
who's the chef. I'm the guy who's doing the marketing, sales. I'm the guy who's running this business. So Uno. So
One,
what if
two, three. One,
yeah,
two, three equals one. Yeah.
yeah. So, but how I've done this is that I've outsourced a lot of the roles and responsibilities that I could have
Mm-hmm.
hired for. So
Mm-hmm.
my vegetable supplies are outsourced. They come to me pre-cut. I just have to open them and start cooking. My meats and
Mm-hmm.
poultry come in processed, so I don't have to worry about anything of that sort because it's all there, right? So when I
Mm-hmm.
go in, I have to set up the kitchen. I get everything done. There has to be some degree of multitasking and processes that you have to put into place. But again,
Mm-hmm.
if I had not thought about all of these things from the get go, if I had not dreamt about how I was going to do things, if I had not put them together
Mm.
from the beginning, I would be completely lost right now. So the
Right.
advantage of dreaming big is sort of like you're your own consultant. And the most important thing, Brett, and that's my the advice I'd give people is you're never wrong. You only have to keep trying to all sorts of ideas that you can possibly come up with to see what happens. And every idea that you have could be something big, but you have to follow it through. You have to see where it goes, and that's where you have to continuously innovate and think of what can be done.
Yeah, this is terrific. And I think, Amjad, what you've shared here, and I'll just start to summarize this before we sign off. But basically, it started with a dream, and not just a random dream, but a dream about something that you're so passionate about.
Yeah.
And the biryani is very important in the Far East and the part of the world that you're at, and that's not only important to you and your family, but it's important to millions of families, right, in that part of the world. So the quality, and you put quality first ahead of quantity, and you took your prior skills in your mind and you actually mapped out what it would take to do it before you started. And it's interesting because when I heard about your recent success, and I've been talking about that this week, that's exactly a perfect example that you've just shared with people around the world watching this of completing something and then starting it. And I just think that that's really terrific what you've done, and I admire your passion. But you also got moving instead of just staying in dreamland and thinking about doing it. You had this in your mind for a few years, and in the middle of a pandemic, you decided to execute your dream. And I think that's so admirable, Amjad. I know you're very proud of yourself, and that's the most important thing. But for what it's worth, I'm very proud of you as well. And I think that's great. And I'd like to thank you for taking the time away from your new profitable business to share the story with all of us. And we'll look forward to having you on here again at some point in the future.
Thank you, Brett. Thank you very much. I'm really honored that I was able to participate in this inaugural process. And I wish you the very best in your successes to come.
Well, thanks very much, Amjad, and we'll see you soon. And special thanks to all of you that tuned in to this very first edition of Minutes with Brett. And I hope you find Amjad's story inspiring. And I would challenge all of you to take what he had to say, and it may not be a restaurant business for you, okay? But it might be something that you've been dreaming about and thinking about doing for a long time, but just haven't taken the step to do it. I hope that this will help you do that. Thanks very much. And everybody have a terrific day and a great evening, depending on where you're at. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Take care.